Hello and welcome back to Kweebec Corner. My name is Connor and today we cover the creative modding capabilities of Hytale with helpful insight from experienced model artists, animators and games designers currently working in the industry. This is part 2 of my deep dive into the mechanics of the game, so make sure to check out the previous video to see a breakdown of the fundamentals of adventure mode using blog posts and UI screenshots that were provided on hytale.com. The ability to mod a game, to alter its code and to adapt base fundamentals of mechanics is not an obscure concept. Players have been changing games since they first existed, whether intended by the studios or not. And why not? Once a game is complete and all features are exhausted, you're either left to replay or wait for a sequel. And it's not that a lot of games don't have replayability, but once you're finally bored of it all, you're essentially left with a toy that's run out of batteries. The phrase, "rules were made to be broken," really hits hard here above all else. It's human nature to want to improve and build on experiences, especially ones we enjoy. It's that defining trait that drives hundreds of communities across the online world to just say, hey wait, why don't we play like this instead?
What in oblivion is that?
And that's completely okay. In fact, encouraging this and furthermore implementing abilities to help players achieve this in your game has shown to dramatically increase your longevity. Major titles that have had success with this method include Minecraft, of course. Fallout and Skyrim have also had a large modding presence, and some have even spawned their own independent titles like Garry's Mod and DayZ, to name a few. These mods in turn develop their own game modes, playstyles, and fanbases. It's a sign of healthy growth and positive relations with your consumers, and it also helps the developers spot trends in what players really want from a game. And of course, the economy of systems like this can be muddy waters. In some cases, a studio may not wish to encourage active modding at all. Perhaps they even prefer to create a monetized system of their own. But regardless of the approach, it should drive creatives together and inspire collaboration. The way to do that is to aim for the creators. Make your game tangible to artists and they are bound to make art. Programs with ease of use features built specifically with designers in mind. With that, Hypixel has given us a glimpse into the processes that will be involved with their modeling, animating, and texturing through the Hytale Model Maker. Although I've been designing Minecraft maps for years, I'm not too experienced with voxel modeling, keyframe animating, or texturing, so I called up 2 of my friends working at a games development company to see their first thoughts and initial opinions on the teasers. I met with Kelsey, a modeler and texture artist for Blockception Limited. If you could describe to me in simple terms the basics of modeling from your experience with Minecraft or similar titles.
So the only experience that I have with modeling in a professional sense is for Minecraft add-ons, or specifically Minecraft Marketplace. Otherwise, I do have some experience with more general modeling, like something you might see in, say, Call of Duty, but for more low poly or voxel models.
If you were to describe this to someone who's completely brand new to modeling, with the current software that you use, if you could talk me through the rough process of how you would start to model in a game.
Generally, I would create just a simple sketch, like on Photoshop, to give myself a kind of reference or guideline, both for the form silhouette as well as its colors, so that when it comes to texturing, for both modeling and texturing, I have a guideline. Everybody models a bit differently, starts their models differently, and at that point it just becomes very technical.
Are you aware of Craft Studio?
I am aware of Craft Studio, however, I have not worked with that program.
Have you ever worked with similar applications?
The closest applications I can imagine similar to Craft Studio would be perhaps Kweebec Studio or Blockbench.
Right off the start, I noticed it's quite similar to other modelling programs like Kweebec and Blockbench. It gives you the same level of control of different cubes. Just by the way the screen's split up too, you can see there's more texture support and more emphasis on that, which is nice to see.
Yeah, I was going to say they really do make use of the real estate of the screen rather than just giving you a full layout of the model with like half of that being like some black background with like a little grid on it.
Yeah, definitely. The area to the right's kind of condensed, which is better because not everyone wants to know about the settings and the more technical side of it.
Kweebec Studio, as far as I know, only provides the base model. There is no animation software within that. However, with Blockbench, they do provide an animation window kind of feature.
I'm noticing it's very similar to Blockbench.
It seems very user-friendly. Like, if I was brand new to modeling, I'd know how to model through this so much easier.
So far from the brief video that was shown, it does seem like it's fairly straightforward. And of course, I imagine it also has lots of features that could allow for anybody who uses that program to make more complex items. It's a matter of finding out where tools are at the end of the day. Otherwise, I am generally familiar with the features of 3D modeling programs from my previous experiences. For example, my very first 3D modeling program is Autodesk Maya, and then the second is ZBrush. Those two programs are actually used in the video game industry, and well, like with most things, you generally don't use every tool. You have like a small handful that you're familiar and comfortable with. And so that was just the same deal with Kweebec Studio and Blockbench, where they have a variety of features, but I just have to find the ones that I like to use. And I think it would be the same about Hytale's Model Maker, but again, I haven't gone in and played with the program myself, so it might be something that interests me a lot, but for now it just seems like another well-made program.
Yeah, this kind of idea of modelling is definitely new and something quite nice.
So if you could describe to me in simple terms the basics of texturing from your experience with Minecraft or similar titles.
My experience with texturing is using my knowledge from my skills as a digital artist. So I do not have any formal experience with pixel art and such, but I do carry over concepts that could still be used, for example, color theory, breaking down forms, negative space, and I try to put that into the texturing that I do. And I discussed before how I usually would make a sketch of my model beforehand, and so when I would do my sketches, I would also render out the sketch just a small bit so that I get the idea of the medium or like default color, as well as its highlight color and more dark color for its shadows. And then essentially I use iPicker tool to help me with the texturing process. The program that I use is Photoshop, and I do work hand in hand with my modeling program, which is Blockbench, simply because I need to use Blockbench in order to make the template, as well as to highlight which element or object I'm texturing. So in a sense, it's like I'm making lots of measurements in Blockbench, and then when I bring it over to Photoshop, I'm able to paint on top of the measurements so that it looks good and also everything is in its right place.
Next up was Dan. He also works at Blockception, and we were keen to discuss the animating processes behind the Model Maker. How's it going, Danny? You good?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
So I'm going to start off with what do you currently use to animate in games?
At the moment, I use a mixture of the Blockbench animation feature and just raw JSON files. Blockbench offers a keyframing method of animation, which essentially allows you to dictate where different parts of a model are going to be at certain times, and it moves between those.
So can you describe for me in simple terms the basics of animation from your experience with similar titles?
Put simply, animation would be just moving or in any way altering a model. So when you start an animation, the thing you essentially want to start with is deciding which bones in the model are going to be animated. So a bone is a group of cubes in my case that are kind of grouped together, and they'll all be moving in the same way. What you need to do is decide where they're going to be or how they're going to have changed by, say, 0.5 seconds, or in a second's time, where are they going to be, how do you want them to get there. It's essentially keyframes and time increments, a lot like stop motion animation. One
thing I noticed is there seems to be a bit more freedom with rotation in this program.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the time, because of other games' supports, this game obviously allows for more intricate rotations and animations, whereas, in some cases, other games might not.
Do you want to talk me through that sort of concept of how a mob can have different animations and how that works in Minecraft as well?
So the different animations at the top are going to be played by the zombie, and it can have essentially unlimited animations, but they're all kind of defined by a separate file called a controller, which dictates when each animation will play.
Sort of like a trigger. So if it gets aggroed on a player, then it changes to, say, an aggro animation if it has one.
Yeah.
Right, gotcha. So all those ones above are the different presets, and they seem easily, you can open them up in different tabs, almost like an explorer, so it seems quite easily interchangeable.
Yeah, it's nice to keep each animation separate so you don't get confused.
In the Blockbench program that you use, are the keyframings this easy to use, like an Adobe sort of Premiere Pro style editing where they're all lined up?
Yeah, there's a bar at the bottom which dictates what time and which bone is being animated and how it's being animated. There's also scale and position that can be changed.
Cool. So this is attachments now, I believe we're looking at.
The attachments is a really nice feature because it saves having to look at it in game to be able to see what's happening when certain things are applied to the model. In the case of, say, Blockbench, you might have to either incorporate the attachments onto the model or change the model to see what they'd look like. But here, seeing as you can animate the attachments as well, it really comes into a league of its own.
It seems they have like their own like adaptive physics as well, depending on the animation. That dress there like animates with the body rather than like I doubt that like attachment has its own separate animation.
That could be the case, but it may also be the case of having its own animation and being really fine-tuned, which is also quite impressive.
Another thing that I wanted to mention is the concept of this maybe not even being an attachment for a zombie. Like it could be an attachment for a skeleton, but it's actually being applied to different mobs.
I quite like that idea because it's the idea of having separate attachments for separate mobs, and they don't have to be animated individually. It can kind of apply to all attachments, which is really nice too. Yeah, that kind of usability is really what'll set it apart.
I think yeah, what dragged Minecraft down is obviously I guess the fact that it's not all built into one program, right? They were all built over years and years with different communities and creators making like mods and
yeah, the idea of having everything made by the same company, I suppose, is brilliant because it means that things can be transferred as well between, you know, possibly future programs to come.
One thing I think is a nice touch I absolutely adore is the jaw, just how that moves. Like, it's such a small detail, but it brings so much life to the creature.
It's a really nice animation, and the fact that they've shown it off is it kind of just demonstrates the depth you can go into with this kind of stuff.
Okay, so I flipped over the video now. So from what I understand, it's essentially real-time updates so that people in the pipeline don't have to wait for the person above them to finish a project. They could both work at the same time. That's pretty impressive. Not only that they made that feature, but that they considered it to begin with.
I'd say that like it's got a really big consideration for creatives.
Yeah, usually in most industries, not just video game, maybe like the larger creative industry and more, you're always waiting for the person before you. And then that gap between waiting and working can sometimes be very disruptive. So having this process of complete collaboration is very helpful.
If you've noticed, the dog's eyes are actually separate from the I guess the face template or the face skin. And that is because in Hytale, those textures actually work separately, so the eyes move on their own independent of the skin.
It definitely would be interesting. Any new feature can always be bent towards an almost infinite amount of ideas. It doesn't have to be eyes, it could be separate limbs, just any type of creature. Yeah, it's cool that they incorporate, or that they allow people to incorporate multiple elements within a single model. It's sort of like how you could have physics or jiggly bones in more modern games, like you would see Assassin's Creed and you see the clothing move in its own unique physics way.
So it's really nice to see that this kind of collaboration within one model is even possible. The fact that someone can be editing a texture and in real time that can be applied to someone else's animation is amazing. A lot of the time when you're editing one model, you'll have to, say, go into Photoshop to edit the texture and then back into your model editor and maybe even into a text editor to edit animations. But here you can see that it's just spread across 3 people, which makes it so much easier. You could have 3 separate people, one for modeling, one for texturing, one for animating, and they could all work at the same time on one model. And that kind of teamwork is what's going to essentially get projects finished.
There's something I've always really loved about the element of just being able to draw on a texture file and see it appear right next to you. It's like you're actually designing a real life model, like you're crafting it, right?
Kweebec Studio and Blockbench do allow for texturing on the model itself in the program. While that is helpful, ultimately I treat it as like an initial sketch kind of program, because with Photoshop I'm able to use a variety of more tools, and it's also a program that I'm more familiar with when it comes to any type of illustration. Texturing I kind of put into illustration. Of course, when you go into the animation window for Blockbench, it totally overrides the modeling UI, which also includes the painting on the model feature.
So I mean, looking at all of what you've looked at, both the animation, the modeling, I guess the texturing as well, how do you think this will enrich the creative environment for teams like Blockception, or for communities that want to create their own servers?
Well, it all depends. Obviously, Hytale's Model Maker provides very helpful features, but at the end of the day, it depends on how each user uses the program. So, while I believe that their Model Maker is very impressive, I still am comfortable with using my current programs.
I think overall what stood out is being able to see the animation of every bone at the same time at the bottom of the screen. Because that's something in Blockbench that you don't have. You have to select the bone to be able to see how it's animated. In the model editor too, the fact that the textures are so prominent on the screen is amazing, because it's normally just a small window, but being able to have it take up a third or even half of your screen is incredible. So even people that use other programs and have done for some time, I can definitely see using this.
One real quick question, just bouncing off of that. What features would be really eye-grabbing for you?
There aren't any particular features that I require from a modeling program for texturing, because in the name itself, it's more for modeling. Texturing is more of an afterthought. So as long as the only feature that I really ask for in any modeling program is that it has allows for real-time updates, so that when you update the texture that you have linked your model to, for example, if you were working on it in Photoshop, the texture, and then you saved your updated texture onto the same file name, and that file name is linked to your model, then it should be immediate that the new texture is applied to the model.
The model maker and being able to edit these animations is definitely something I'm looking forward to. It's just the way it looks, it's so smooth and so simplified as opposed to other programs.
Thank you for answering my questions and taking the time. So the process of modeling and texturing in Hytale definitely looks alluring. It offers the strongest features of similar software and builds upon Craft Studio with elements of real-time editing and modular attachments. I think it's clear that lots of consideration and thought went into the maker. The ease of use shows that the team understands what's necessary to make a collaborative and creative tool, and all that said, the feature that most enticed me when advertised was Machinimas. Machinimas rose up as video streaming services expanded across the internet. During bursts of gaming tutorials and let's plays, people also began to film their in-game experiences cinematically, adding their own roleplay elements, characters, and plot lines while making use of the world the studio had provided. From Warcraft to Borderlands, there was content aplenty, a thriving new medium. I've actually worked on numerous projects throughout the years for multiple titles and attempted to create immersive new worlds, from YouTube shows and interactive adventure maps to server game modes, so I thought I'd be a good fit to cover this segment. There are 4 main aspects to making any good machinima. The first thing you have to have right is your cinematography. Much like any production, how you film and the path the camera takes is a fundamental part of creating your desired image. Most camera mods and programs help adapt the game's user interface and screen mechanics to give a clearer view of the world so that filming is seamless and attractive. If you're lucky and the game you're playing is optimized, then lighting should be covered already, and from there you just need your scene and the path your camera will take through said scene. Be it single point shots or a set of coordinates that a camera will follow, like any director you need to be conscious of your framing and positioning as you go. And what's quite quirky about Hytale is that it seems filming is a built-in feature both mechanically and visually, with the player possessing an in-game camera that captures footage all on its own, and seems to transmit to the closest display monitor. They've also repurposed minecarts and tracks to act as a camera rig or dolly. Whether this is more of a gag or visual metaphor for what we can expect, I think it's safe to say this method of filming would be very easy and accessible to all. I'd assume cameras can remove player names and UI automatically, but if not, I'm sure there's a setting somewhere. I'm actually eager to know the capabilities and limits of this stuff though. Can we zoom and alter panning smoothness like Optifine? Would we be able to rotate the perspective and perhaps even add lens filters? Or maybe that'll be a job for the community. Of course, you can't film a scene if you don't have a scene, and if the huge world of Hytale isn't offering you enough for your set design urges, then luckily we've had previews of a world painter type mode. It's perhaps a sub-area of creative mode, and it's where brushes and build schematics can be used. No doubt this will be how you develop your own scenery and locations. World builders will hopefully thrive with features like this. Expect to see a lot of time lapses, that's for sure. And I for one adored world editing growing up, so to see a similar tool featured directly in the game would be amazing. So you have your path and your set, but now you need characters. Body acting with multiple players and coordinating scenes has always been a little tricky, from delays and lag to out of sync movements and timing. Believe me when I say things can get stressful. It's expected that you'll be able to play different races, or at least allowed to edit your player model, which is good, and you can change your form and perhaps even disguise as different mobs. For Machinima, this is a huge benefit, and hopefully you won't have to log out to update your skin, as that was a real pet peeve of mine back in the day. Speaking of back in the day, a popular Machinima method was to create custom paths for NPCs. This way you could guarantee the right positioning and dictate timing yourself. With the live scripting feature, perhaps you'll delve into creating your own cinematics and cutscenes within the game. Finally, you can finish off with effects and post. There are infinite ways you can edit your footage to improve or enhance its appearance, but the more of those options on offer within the game, then the less work on Premiere Pro or other editing software. A huge topic of conversation at the moment is whether a form of Redstone will exist in Hytale. I think it's pretty safe to say yes. Redstone, and I can't believe I'm saying this, was somewhat revolutionary. The things I've seen some people do with Redstone, I mean, look at this, and this. Once a guy even made a working calculator. Like, what? It's insane, and I'm sure Hypixel knows it, having multiple Redstoners working amongst their ranks. So, what is Redstone? Basically, it's just electrical wiring. And what's on the floor in this shot right here? Yep, it seems like we'll have wires and different coloured box devices and connectors to control our contraptions in Hytale. With Minecraft, you had blocks that could be triggered, like dispensers and command blocks. And here, we see some special effect cubes, which is what I'll call them for now, being triggered to cause explosions. In-game visual effects and particle triggers will actually enrich Machinima content, and no doubt you'll be able to edit and add your own. This ultimately helps the audience suspend disbelief and become more immersed in the world that you want to create. Safe to say, Hytale will be filled with a vast array of triggered device blocks, and I for one am stoked to see what they've come up with, and furthermore, what the community will do with it. So, we've touched on the trials and tribulations of model making in the industry, what it takes to animate, texture, and how this will be adapted in the Hytale creative tools. World building and movie making will no doubt be a popular feature, and as I come to part 3 of this mechanics breakdown, we'll venture into the possibilities for server developers in this new landscape, what it means for them, and how to build worlds and game modes that players truly love. If you like this form of video with interviews and insight from the industry, make sure to let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching Kweebec Corner. Stay safe and keep free.